Next unit's going to be covering a couple of different chapters. It's the biggest unit of the year. We're going to be working our way through absolute monarchs of Europe, the Age of Enlightenment, as well as the French Revolution. So covering a couple of different things. There's no real easy way to kind of make this all one unit. So we're going to separate units, I guess. So we're going to kind of lump it all together. So it's going to be the longest quiz you're going to take all year. So just make sure we're kind of following along, understand what we're doing. My face is covering the years we're talking about here with this first set of PowerPoints from 1500 to 1800. We're talking about the absolute monarchs of Europe. We're going to give a brief overview and talk about the kings of Spain in this video. Our next video will cover the absolute monarchs of France, and the third video for this section of our new unit is going to cover the absolute monarchs of England and what happened to the absolute monarchs of England. So I'll give you something to look forward to. So that's what we're doing here for this unit. I need everything in yellow, but we want to kind of give you a little bit of overview of what we're talking about here as we're moving into this age of monarchs. We talked about in the Reformation that the church has begun to lose its political, religious, social power that it's had. We keep going back to the year 1098 with the Pope Urban II calling for the First Crusade, and 100,000 people drop what they're doing, and this is the height of the kings of Europe's the Pope's power in Europe. And as the Pope and the church has begun to look for an age of reform, had people attack it for different reasons. We see the Reformation. The church is losing a lot of this power that it's had. And so the people who are there to kind of gather up the power that the church has lost are going to be the absolute monarchs of Europe. They're working to restore order from chaos. The chaos that we're talking about is, again, the age of Reformation, which we haven't really talked a whole lot about into. We talked about a lot about the conflicts, but we didn't understand just how massive and widespread and how much bloodshed is occurring from them. And so as these monarchs are working their way to the top of the power structure, as Europe is kind of fighting and figuring out what they're doing, it's going to be the monarchs that restore the order from this chaos. They're going to establish unity from division. Europe is going to be transformed from this kind of splintering into duchies, counties, bishoprics, fiefdoms, dukedoms, uh, into the coalescing around to larger states, and then finally into kingdoms and the creation of the nation state of France, of England, of Spain. The monarchs are going to prefer force over faith, and they're going to be using the church for their own selfish means to be able to continue to force people under their control and to live under their rule. So what we see here is that the absolute monarchs of Europe are looking to establish peace. They're going to be able to do that by centralizing the government, making the government very much work from the king all the way down to the lowest peasants and serf. To with a new centralized government, with the taxation and judicial system that they're going to establish, it's going to allow these kings of Europe to encourage trade. So we're kind of building off of what we already see, and a lot of this stuff is overlapping in the time period. This encouragement of trade is going to fund explorations of the Portuguese, of the Spanish, of the French, of the English. And so this is going to encourage trade to go and make money. But remember, some of this money is not being made by the different kings and not for the royal government. It's being made by individuals. So that's going to make kings collect taxes. And these taxes are being collected with the purpose of enriching the king and enriching thus the kingdom, but also to provide services for the people, for armies to protect them, for roads, for a better system of justice and internal trade, which is going to allow the monarchs to then reap the profits for this, which then they're going to both use and abuse. And we'll see how different monarchs are punished or are allowed to kind of do what they're doing. These profits are then turned back into the country to allow them to establish peace, which is centralized the government, which allows them to encourage trade, which allows them to collect taxes, which allows them to be profits. It becomes this cycle that kind of keeps going throughout this time period in Europe. So for our terms, when we're trying to define this term of absolutism, what we mean here is that sovereignty is embodied in one ruler. What we mean by this, it means that the king or the queen of the country during this time period is that state. So if I go and insult the king of France, I'm not just insulting that one individual person, because of sovereignty being kind of wound up in the identity of that person, you're not just insulting the King of France, you're insulting the kingdom of France and all the French people. So the idea of the kingdom as a political entity and that person are interlocked and are one and the same. And that's when we notice they have absolute power from this time period because, again, they are the ones who are running the state. They're the ones who are making every single solitary decision in essence. Now, what allows them to be able to rule and not somebody else? Why does the King of France get to be the King of France and not Mr. Cranmer be the King of France? Because these kings are ruling through the sacred divine right of kings. And the divine right is this idea that the king of this country is a vessel of God's power. God has come down to earth and plucked this individual out and said, this is going to be the ruler of my kingdom in my stead. And that's why they get to be the ones in charge. God has chosen them. We see kings in different kingdoms using this to their advantage. The king of France was said to have the royal touch. When you became king, God's power flowed through you to be able to cure diseases like the disease of scrofula. And now, if we kind of work our way through this, scrofula is a skin disease, which you get if you're kind of not bathing regularly or if you're constantly kind of in dirt and you're dealing with the stuff. So, what's probably people going to do if they're going to meet the king? Take a bath, to be able to go and make sure you're extra super clean, and then the king catches you, and then a couple days later, the scrofula clears up. So those are ideas, but again, that's the belief of the time period. Thus, all citizens then were required to follow royal laws because the royal laws were the laws of the land, and the royal laws were created by the king or the queen, and whatever they said went. And thus, these monarchs ruled with absolute total power during this time period. Now, the book is going to describe the 10 requirements of an absolute monarch. So these are some ideas that you want to kind of think of as we work our way through this unit and we talk about the various and different kings and queens that we're seeing pop up here. They're going to protect and expand the state, maintain public order, win support of the nobility, control the nobility, promote economic growth, maintain an independent source of revenue, develop a national idea, the idea of what it means to be a Frenchman, what it means to be an Englishman, what it means to be a Spaniard, inspire loyalty, use the power of the law, and establish a sense of purpose for the kingdom. What does a Frenchman do as a Frenchman? What does a Spanish person do in the greater world? So those are the ideas. So these are requirements that we kind of want to see how they develop and how they move throughout the course of the unit here. So we're going to start with the rest of this video and the rest of this particular PowerPoint, working our way through the kings of Spain. So that's how we're spending the rest of today. We'll get into the couple other kingdoms of Europe in the next couple of videos on absolutism. Spain from 1550 to 1650 is experienced its golden century, its siglo del oro. Remember that Spain has these giant New World colonies stretching from San Francisco to Tierra del Fuego. It has the mine of Potsy, which is dropping a literal river of silver back into Europe. But Spain has also gone across the Pacific and has taken over the Philippine Islands, as well as started to go work its way through India into China, as well as in and around Africa as well. This is a giant worldwide empire that is only growing with power during this time period. The first of the Spanish absolute monarchs is Charles V, and he rules from 1519 to 1556. Now, we've already talked to him a little bit. We talked about Martin Luther and the Reformation. We've talked about him and how Catholic he is, which leads into going and domineering the Catholic princes because in the Holy Roman Empire, because when Charles V takes over through various and assorted Habsburg kingdoms in Europe, he now inherits the Kingdom of Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, the Netherlands, and southern Italy. He is the most powerful ruler in Europe since Charlemagne. So this is a major big deal that he's going and doing. Plus, we add in the New World colonies as well. This is a reign of constant warfare. He's fighting the Protestant German princes in the Holy Roman Empire. The Protestant Netherlands breaks away, so he has to go and go and try to fight that. The Spanish Road has Spanish soldiers and money going around the Kingdom of France by going into Italy, marching up through neutral, allied, and Charles V's land holdings to go and fight this long civil war in this area, to where you get the Dutch Protestant Netherlands breaking away and the Spanish Netherlands, as far as you get in the Netherlands and Belgium in through today, as well as the Kingdom of Naples in the south of Italy. He's also fighting the Ottoman Turks. Remember, the whole part of the Age of Exploration is to go and get spices. The Ottoman Turks are controlling that spice trade. You can take that from them. You can make some money. So he's fighting in the Mediterranean as well. So that's what really, if we're talking about him in a nutshell, we want to get more into what his sons do. In 1556, he's going to retire. He's going to divide his empire amongst his two sons, and he's going to go to a monastery to live out the rest of his days. Remember, he is very, 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 very Catholic. So the two sons that now inherit this giant worldwide empire include his son Ferdinand, who takes over Austria and the Holy Roman Empire, Central Europe, as his son Philip, who will become king. Philip II of Spain will gain Spain, the Netherlands, and the colonies. Now we ask the question, you've got the two brothers here. Let's put yourselves in here. You're one of these brothers. Which offer do you want to take? Which is the better offer? Who ends up with the better deal? And if you use your critical thinking skills and you think through this, the obvious answer is Philip. Because what does Philip get? Philip gets the colonies and all the riches and all the stuff that's in there. So Ferdinand's empire is much more established in Europe, but Philip has all of the brand new cutting edge frontier wealth of the colonies to be able to draw upon for Spain. Seen this portrait already before, that's Charles V. And again, he is ruling a worldwide empire. He's got Spain, southern Italy, most of Central Europe, the Netherlands, and then again, as we go around the world, he's got the New World colonies, the Caribbean islands, places in Africa, as well as the Philippines, named in honor of his son Philip, who will become king, Philip II of Spain. Philip II's 42-year reign is at the height of Spanish power. So he is the one who's going to be overseeing a worldwide Spanish empire growing in more power, prestige, and wealth throughout these 42 years. Now, he devoted much of his time to government work, and like his father, was extraordinarily Catholic. So he lived very sparsely. We want to be able to put this in the back of our brains and be able to go and compare this with the extravagance of the French and, to a lesser extent, English monarchs who are at the same time period in European history. He built his palace. This is called the Escorial. Now, the Escorial had a working monastery in it, as well as the government building. At the heart of the Escorial was a cathedral, so this should very much kind of color your interpretation of where Philip is. His goal in life is, again, to very much have the Catholic Church at the center of the Spanish government. It's literally at the center of the palace, as well as putting the Spanish people in a very Catholic kingdom in fighting against the Reformation. Now, Philip has two major goals as the new king of Spain. The biggest and largest of them is to become the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church. His second goal is he wants to make money, but his major goal that's capitalized is the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church. So he's going to do this through a couple of different ways, but the first major way is by fighting the Reformation that's going on. So one way to become the guardian Catholic Church is to fight against the Muslim Ottomans. His major victory that he has is fighting the Ottomans at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. This very much wins for Catholic Christian Europeans. The Western Mediterranean pushes the Muslims back into the Eastern Mediterranean, and this further cements the spice trade looking across the Atlantic and the Pacific for the Europeans. So he's fighting against the Muslims against the Ottomans there. The second way he becomes the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church is fighting against the Dutch Protestants in the Netherlands. Now, the northern Netherlands has broken away to go with a more Protestant religious backgrounding. So he's trying to go and bring them back into the Catholic fold. This is what will eventually cause the split between the northern Netherlands breaking away to become Dutch Protestants in the Netherlands, that's a country today, think of the state of Holland, and then the southern Netherlands still remaining under the control of the Spanish, which will eventually become the Catholic nation of Belgium. Now, the northern Netherlands, which is breaking away as Protestants, is going to get help from other Protestant nations, including the Protestant nation of England, which, if you remember, Philip is married to the Queen Mary, who's ousted out of the throne, so he wants to punish England for supporting these Protestant rebels. So we'll see what he does here in a second. Here's Philip II. He's got the prominent Habsburg chin, as again the Habsburg monarchs begin to intermarry more and more and more closely with each other. We'll see more and more poor things develop with subsequent generations of Habsburgs as they keep sleeping with one another and having more and more Habsburg babies. He's going to build this palace called the Escorial, and hopefully you can see right from this picture that the heart of this palace is a working cathedral as well as the monastery attached to that. So the Spanish kings are very much, again, Philip wants to become the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church. He does that through his state building. And these state buildings literally have the church at its heart, and then again, the government buildings and other things that they have there as well. As the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church, he works to be able to fight against the Muslims in and around the Mediterranean, and the big battle of Lepanto is one of the great sea battles of the Mediterranean, and this emerges with a Spanish victory and the Muslim Ottomans having to retreat back to the eastern Mediterranean. Now, as we said, Spain is fighting against the Protestants. Spain is fighting against the Protestants in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is being helped by other Protestant countries, including England. England is causing problems for the Spain, is becoming a thorn in their side by plundering Spanish ships, not only in the Caribbean but around the world. Think of what we talked about, why Francis Drake was sent off when he was to steal from the Spanish, as well as helping the Dutch independence movement, which is causing a lot of money to be drawn out of Spain in fighting this civil war between Spanish subjects in the Netherlands and Spain outright. So Philip is determined to bring England under its heel, as well as return England to the Catholic fold. So the response to this is that in 1588 he launches the Spanish Armada. The Spanish Armada is 130 ships. These are probably about 100 ships of the line. These are 3, 4-story battleships with sometimes upwards of hundreds of cannons, sending an invasion fleet to land these 20,000 soldiers in England, to then march on England, take it over, put his wife or himself that he now claims kind of through his marriage to his wife Mary, the throne of England, as well as again bringing England back into the Catholic fold. So not looking well here for England, except that this plan is defeated. It's defeated by small, more maneuverable, heavier gunned English galleons. These English galleons are able to get themselves into trouble and out of trouble just as quickly. They have larger cannons, and some of the ships have more cannons than the Spanish ships do, to be able to provide a counter to the bigger, larger, more impressive, but slower Spanish warships. The English also send fire ships out into the Spanish Armada. So the analogy we want to draw is, think of wolves hunting bison on the Great Plains. Right? The wolves want to be able to separate out the weaker and older bison from the herd. You can't just go and attack the herd. So that's what the English fire ships idea is. And they're basically ships England sets on fire. These are wooden ships. They set on fire. They are pushed and sent into the heart of the Spanish fleet, which causes the Armada to break up, which allows the faster, smaller, more maneuverable English galleons to work together to take on these Spanish ships and be able to go and take them on individually. This becomes a running battle through the English Channel in the fall of 1588 when the English protect the English Channel and Spain decides, well, we're going to then go and sweep all the way around England. If we can't go and land in the southern coast, we're going to go all the way around, come back and try again. They're attacked by storms off the coast of Scotland, off the coast of Ireland, and those band storms send those Spanish Armada ships to the bottom of the Atlantic. So this is a failure for Spain, and the Armada is going to limp back home with about just over half, just 70 of the 130 ships returned back to Spain. These ships cost a lot of money. This is a significant amount of Spanish treasure being sent to the bottom of the Atlantic in a time where, again, rising inflation and the economy of Spain isn't working out real well. So Spanish Armada leaving from Spain, working its way through again the early autumn and late summer of 1588. And again, you want to think of this as a series of running battles. It's not just constant fighting as Spain is looking for a place to be able to go and land on English soil and then march on England. The English are very much able to fight them off. You kind of see a map from the time period as the Spanish fleet begins to work towards its way towards Cornwall in the southwestern tip of England. They run into bad storms off the coast of Scotland, off the coast of Ireland, which forces the Spanish Armada to return home with, again, just over half of its ships. Very fierce fighting. Again, fire on the open ocean on wooden ships, not good. So fierce fighting, intense fighting, not a whole lot of fun. To finish up, we've talked about this in the Age of Exploration, is that Spain is reaping all the benefits of all this, again, literal river of silver coming into the European continent, but this is leading to an economic decline with this giant inflation. Later rulers of Spain lacked the strong leadership that Charles V had, that Philip II had, very much willing to live high in the hog, reaping the benefits of their worldwide empire. As they're trying to get the empire under their control, costly overseas wars are draining the wealth out of Spain. The Spanish Armada, the Civil War, fighting nearly constantly with France, and then fighting with France all over the globe takes and costs a lot of money. So you're bringing in all this money, but you're spending it just as fast as it comes in. Remember, all this money coming from the Americas, this gold and silver is leading to soaring inflation. And so the inflation problems back in Spain, because of these overseas wars, spread that inflation throughout Europe, but also has a giant effect on Spain. Spain should be this global, worldwide power. We should be talking, it probably should be speaking Spanish. We should be having Spanish be the lingua franca of the earth, and yet it's not because of the inflationary problems that they have. So the big analogy, the metaphor that comes from this time period is Miguel Cervantes' book Don Quixote. And this very much is a good idea of representing Spain itself in this time period, as Don Quixote is this very idealistic knight, but goes about his kind of goals and quests in a very impractical way. So movies have been made about this. I encourage you to read the book. But again, Don Quixote is this aging knight who believes in saving damsels in distress, who believes in fighting giants and slaying dragons, and yet those aren't real. So one of the more famous stories of Don Quixote is where Don Quixote and his friend Sancho Panza are trying to work their way towards saving, in Don Quixote's mind, one of his a damsel in distress, and he comes across a big giant. And Don Quixote puts on his armor and tells Sancho Panza, "Stay back, I'm going to charge the giant." But there is no giants. there's just windmills. And so Don Quixote goes and charges the windmill. He gets his spear stuck, and he goes around and around and around. And very much, again, that's a small story in the larger story of Spain having all these idealistic goals, being the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church, of gaining all this wealth. And yet, what do they have to show from this 100, 200, 300 years later? It is not a whole lot. So that's going to end our story of the absolute monarchs of Spain. We'll come back in our next video, working our way through our next kingdom, the kings of France.